Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of the Guitarist Corner. We have in the house tonight Mr. Guitar Hack himself,
Cheers.
Jim Bacchi, and Eric Porter. Good evening, gentlemen, and everybody watching. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, whatever time it might be where you are. We're here to talk today about our favorite whammy bar moments. Eric, I would like you to kind of show what we're talking about real quick there. If you could hold up one of those guitars and
Got my old
right there. There you go.
Kramer.
There you go.
There you go.
What is that?
An old Kramer Pacer. I think it's a 86.
Those
Oh, yeah.
are nice.
So whether
It's
it's
the
a
only guitar I have with
Portios
one.
or a Strat or whatever you might have, or whatever the people we're talking about might have, a lot of great players over the years have taken that bar and wrangle it in all sorts of different directions and used it for different reasons. We were talking before we went on air that sometimes there are some cool moments where it's just utter chaos and noise, and other times you have these great players who really use it in a nice lyrical melodic fashion. So I think we're going to have like a lot of examples of all of these things, and looking forward to hear what everybody's come up with. So we've each got a list of 10. And then we're going to do some honorable mentions at the end. So we'll go in the order that I introduced everybody. So we'll go Hack and Jim and Eric. We'll each list one pick. We'll go round and round and round until we get through all of them. So what do you got?
All right. So for my number 10, I've got Pantera, Dimebag Darrell, and it's Cemetery Gates. He was doing these things. This is basically the tag out of the song. And I remember this distinctly because it was in, a guitar magazine. And I think it's the magazine. This is old. It had a picture of Ace and him in Kiss makeup and Snake from Skid Row. Right. Snake Sabo. Yeah. And he was explaining how to do it. And it's this really cool thing where like you basically, you take the Floyd and you just flatten it. Right. So your strings are spaghetti. And you hit a harmonic and then you let it come up, right? So it's like it's these harmonics that just come from nowhere, just woo, and he's doing that all through the end of Cemetery Gates, and it sounds so bloody cool, right? And I love that effect. It's really hard to do because I tried doing it, but it's Dimebag, right? So he nails it, and that's my number 10, Cemetery Gates, Pantera.
Right on. I've employed that trick.
Yeah.
It's actually not that hard if you use the harmonics and you just hit the bar and then you kind of tap the harmonic with your finger and
you bring it up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's if you got a lot of gain, it's super easy.
Yeah, gain, yeah.
Yeah, right on. Okay, so I'm next, right?
Yes, Jim, you're up.
So I could have picked. I kind of went because like we talked a little bit and like Walt said, I don't necessarily I'm super crazy about the whammy bar. I did use one, but I stopped using them due to how complicated they are to maintain and to keep in tune and cutting the strings to put on the Floyd Rose. This is a big nightmare. I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna all my favorite guitar players, most of them use this, but I do like guys with bars. So some of mine are my favorite moments, and some of them are like seminal moments in whammy bardom. Like as time started, you started with Hendrix. He was kind of the first person to really, really go extreme on it. And then as technology got better, so did the more extremity of the usage of the bar. So I'm going to say my number 10, and I have two from this person on the list. My number 10 is Panama by Van Halen. There are any number of Van Halen songs you could pick.
Yeah.
I just happen to like what he does on the bar in that particular, but I mean, if I go through the records again and listen, like, oh yeah, there's that one. That one's really cool. I mean, there's a million of them,
Yeah.
So I just always think, I love the way he uses, it's pretty musical, the way he uses the bar in Panama. So Panama Van Halen is my number 10.
Cool.
Cool.
Eric.
Well, I think I took the same approach as Jim. I was trying to think more in terms of my favorite players, but obviously there were guys that, and I wasn't a big metal guy, but the 80s, obviously a lot of guys were using that after Van Halen came out. And one of the guys I remember impressing me was Brad Gillis. And obviously I saw those Ozzy videos all the time on MTV, and I think he did Speak of the Devil. So he was playing Randy's stuff, but he used a lot of whammy bar. So in that instance, I just remember seeing those shows, and they always showed those clips. But so it could either go with an Ozzy tune, which would be live, or obviously when Night Ranger came out, I think Don't Tell Me You Love Me, which is the song everybody knows. But between him and Watson and the stuff Watson did with his tapping, I mean, it was just crazy. And that necessarily wasn't the kind of music I really was into, but the guy was kind of one of those guys who came out of the 80s, and he was all over the whammy bar. So I'm going with Brad Gillis for my number 10.
I can't believe I forgot Brad Gillis here. Yeah, Don't Tell Me You Love Me is, I mean, that's textbook Gillis right there.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, great pick. Yeah, you could pick almost any solo from any notable Night Ranger song, basically, or that entire Speak of the Devil album.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Yeah.
All right. Mine aren't really in any order, so these are not necessarily, my favorite or least favorites out of the 10. And I will say, I think, Jim was mentioning before about how I think my approach, when I noodle around on the guitar, I used to have guitars with Floyd Roses. They're a pain in the ass. I mean, as fun as they can be, just to maintain them is like a nightmare. So really, I mean, I've got a Strat with a tremolo bar on it. That's pretty simple, right? That's like really old school. And then I've got, another simple one on my Paul Reed Smith. That's it. I don't own anything with Floyd Roses anymore, because to me, it's just like a nightmare to kind of take care of. And so, but I still like listening to guys who use them, So my number 1 or my number 10 is from an album called Tokyo Tapes by the Scorpions. The guitarist is Uli John Roth, known as Ulrich Roth or Ulrich Roth back in the day. The song is Fly to the Rainbow. I picked this live version as opposed to the studio version because the whole last half of the song is just him doing this amazing stuff on the Strat with these crazy screams and dive bombs, and, very reminiscent of Hendrix back like in the late 60s, early 70s, because Hendrix was his hero. But man, it's just so haunting to listen to this stuff. It's the end of the song, and it just goes on and on for about 1 to 2 minutes, and it's just absolutely like chill inducing. And it's always one of my favorite whammy bar moments of any player ever. And Uli was a master of using the whammy bar, I think. So that is my first choice. Fly to the Rainbow from Tokyo Tapes, Uli John Roth and the Scorpions. So
cool. Cool. Yeah, like you guys, I've owned guitars with Floyd Roses, and I have a PRS CE, also has a trem, but I generally deck them. I put in extra springs, and just for the fact, because when I'm gigging, if you break a string, your whole guitar goes to shit, right?
Yeah.
That's a big worry with Floyd's, but yeah, like I love the sound of them, and if you got them all tuned up, and they sound amazing. For my number 9, he uses a we call it a tremolo bar, a whammy bar, but he uses it in the most, I think, of anybody on my list, the most musical way, where he literally makes it sing, and he has just so much control over it. I'm talking about Jeff Beck, right? That guy's just, oh my God, like the control and that he has with that tremolo bar. And the song, I mean, there's a few of them, but the one I'm going to mention here is Where Were You? If you've ever seen that Ronnie Scott concert video, and he's playing that, and he's just like, the guy has such a good touch and control. It's like, oh my God. I mean, it leaves you speechless watching this guy play, with that. I mean, there's no words. It's just, for me, in terms of like control and being able to make it musical, I don't think anybody can touch Jeff Beck. So that's my number 9.
I think you could basically use that whole Guitar Shop album as an example of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of examples, but Where Were You, like, it's so lyrical.
Oh, it totally is. I think he won a Grammy for that song, if I remember correctly.
I don't know, he may have. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a great pick.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, back to you.
Okay, so 2 of my picks got picked already.
Did you have Fly the Rainbow? Did you have Fly the Rainbow as well?
No, but I had so
Okay.
but that's coming up, and I'm still going to use them. My number 9 is Wicked Game by Chris Isaak.
Oh God.
And yeah. Oh, so I got you back. Jimmy Wilsey. I mean, the subtlety of the way he uses the bar and how beautifully it's done.
Yeah.
Masterful. I mean, such atmosphere, and obviously all the reverb and all of that. I just love how subtle the bends are. There's like it's in micros, it's very
micro
small,
bends, yeah.
but it's beautiful, and just between that and the reverb and his note choices, it's a beautiful tune. So I'm going that for a Wicked Game. Chris Isaak, and that's Jimmy Wilsey on guitar, the late Jimmy Wilsey.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Cool.
Awesome.
Cool.
Eric?
So my number 9, I'm going to go, I know we've been talking about the Floyd Rose, but I'm going to go back even before Hendrix in terms of the sound. And I think this guy uses Gretsch guitars. So I'm thinking the Bigsby is the tremolo bar he uses. And I'm going with Brian Setzer. And like Pete had done, I've been watching some clips and listening to stuff. There's a live version. I think the tune is Sleepwalk. And I just love that sound. He uses all that reverb. It's got that really, and he's got same thing. He's got a really nice touch with that. You're not talking about the other side, like we were talking about with some players where they just go nuts with it, and just drenched in reverb, that nice tremolo bar. I know he used it a lot with the Stray Cats as well, but I really dig that sound for some reason. And I'm sure there's people who've done it better. I don't know a lot of the players from the 50s, but he's a player that always stood out to me. I saw him live with his big band, and he was absolutely incredible, or the Brian Setzer Orchestra.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Amazing.
So
Amazing
that's my number 9.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, great player. Really good player.
Good choice. And yeah, he's such a great player, man.
So I knew I had to have Alan Holdsworth on this list. And what do you choose, right? There's a lot to choose from. So I went and picked a bunch of the bands he's played with some of the solo stuff. And I was actually watching lots of clips. I'm like, all right, I got to choose one of them, right? So I went with a song called Enigmatic Ocean Part 3 from the Jean-Luc Ponty album, Enigmatic Ocean. And I think it's one of my favorite Alan solos among many of them, but I think it's one of the ones where he really uses the whammy bar to great effect. And it's like this floating thing. You could just, I don't know, when I hear the solo in this, I just picture Alan and his guitar kind of swimming over the clouds. And as mind-boggling as the solo is, it's beautiful and it's lyrical and all the notes sing, but he doesn't go crazy with the bar, but he just basically just slightly manipulates it a little bit and gets all these crying sounds out of the the notes just sing and they cry. It's just absolutely beautiful. And I think he used the bar more early in his career than I think later in the career. And especially I think when he started using the syntax, he got away from using the bar because obviously he wasn't playing a lot of guitars as much at that time. But if you listen to a lot of the things he did throughout the 70s and even the early 80s, that's I think where you get him using the bar the most. So Enigmatic Ocean Part 3 from Jean-Luc Ponty featuring Alan Holdsworth.
Great pick.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right, Hack.
So this is my first of the low-hanging fruit. Somebody mentioned earlier, if we're talking about bars, we got to talk about Jimi Hendrix. And for me, and we were talking about the musical thing and just creating sounds. I mean, Star Spangled Banner.
Gotta have it, right? Yeah.
Holy shit. I mean, the guy's just making all these just this chaos, and then that doo-doo with the bombs, and it feels like bombs are dropping, sirens, and just that's just a crazy good example of using the bar in a creative way to make really, really cool sounds, right? So yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but yeah. Can't say anything more about Star Spangled Banner, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
All right, Jim, back to you.
Yeah, I would call that a seminal moment in whammy barness.
Oh, definitely.
I don't think nobody did that before him, and that was groundbreaking for most people. Just kind of, did a little quick shake on the bar. So I'm with you. I didn't put that on my list because I knew someone else would pick it. But so I'm gonna, my next one is I already mentioned, but I'm gonna say it here, and I consider this another seminal whammy bar moment is the solo in Don't Tell Me You Love Me" by Brad Gillis, Night Ranger, for that flick thing, where you make the, I've never heard anybody do. I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? And I finally saw, I saw other people do it, or I think I first saw Stryper do it, but I didn't realize that Brad Gillis had been.
Steve Vai does that all the time.
You got to use a Floyd Rose. It's got to be stuck in one spot, and you smack it, and it makes a, and he plays notes with it, which was just like, wow, that's freaking cool. I mean, the whole solo is just an exercise of all the cool stuff. An example of what you could do with a whammy bar right to the end of the song, the way they end the song, wee, 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 that whole thing. So I thought that was pretty groundbreaking for whammy bar usage, because I don't know how many people were using those locking Floyd Roses back in 1983.
Yeah, it was early.
It was super early, and like, to me, he was groundbreaking with the whammy bar. So Don't Tell Me You Love Me, Brad Gillis, Night Rangers, my number 8.
Cool. All right, Eric.
All right, now I'm going to go the opposite of my last pick. So obviously Brian Setzer, I was going more, tasteful. Not that, I shouldn't use that word, but I'm going to take another 80s guy and I'm going to go the other way, somebody who maybe used it to the extreme at times. And again, go with the obvious because it's what people will know when you're talking about them, but I'm going to go with Vernon Reid from Living Color. Cult of Personality.
Mm-hmm.
But there's obviously other things he did that, the deeper tracks that people may not necessarily know, but that's obviously one that they can get into. And I just remember seeing them live, or not live, seeing them on MTV, and they had the crazy colorful outfits, but that guy just, he was on fire on that. And when you can come across that way on a studio track, I've never seen him live. I'm sure he was fantastic and is fantastic, but that really cuts through when somebody can hit you in a studio track and it just sounds raw and aggressive. And he was another guy that really attacked that whammy bar. So that's going to be my number 8, Vernon Reid.
Cool. Yeah, that solo is crazy. It's so chaotic, but so on at the same time.
It works. Yeah.
And I will say I saw them open up for the Rolling Stones in 1989 on the Steel Wheels tour. And yes, he can recreate that noise live.
There you go.
Yeah, I think I saw him at the Ritz right after that first record came out. Yeah, he's pretty badass.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. So since Jimi Hendrix Star Spangled Banner was already picked, I had that on my list as well, because I think that's the most representative of what we're talking about here. But Jimmy has another one that is actually my favorite guitar solo of all time, and it's Machine Gun on the Band of Gypsys album. Yeah. Only someone like Jimi Hendrix can make the guitar sound like bombs and machine guns and poor young soldiers dying out in the battlefield in Vietnam, and just the chaos and cacophony of war and the horrors of war. And he brings about all those elements in this, 2.5 minute long solo on Machine Gun, live from the Fillmore East on New Year's weekend in New York City back in 1969, turning into 1970. It's one of the greatest solos ever. And the things he did with the whammy bar on that particular version are just absolutely stunning. And to me, it rivals the Star Spangled Banner whammy bar usage, although a little more, within the confines of the song, not just a, whatever you want to call it, Star Spangled Banner. That's just a spectacle, I think, and an amazing one. But yeah, so Machine Gun, Jimi Hendrix from Band of Gypsys. Back to Hack.
All right, so this one here, this is from the 70s, and this was one of, I don't know. I'm thinking one of the earlier uses of a whammy, but this would have been on a Strat. This is before Floyd Rose times. This is Roger Fisher on the solo Heart Barracuda, where you hit the harmonics and woo.
Yeah.
And that was like, I mean, for the time, man, that's some pretty cool shit. And that stuff that, that whole hit a harmonic and hit the whammy for the little tremolo there, that's, was something that, been used a million times since. But I mean, that whole harmonic thing in Barracuda is, I mean, I love the song, and that bit is just crazy good. So, and Roger Fisher is one of those guys that does not get a lot of credit, and
Absolutely. Yep.
that guy was an
He's
absolute
amazing,
monster,
man.
Great player.
monster player, monster player. So kudos to Roger Fisher for that. But yeah, so my number 7 is Heart, Barracuda.
Great choice.
Yep.
Great choice.
Didn't even think of them, but yeah.
Yeah, we have Roger's amazing. Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah, man.
Cool pick. All right, Jim.
Okay, so I'm going Captain Obvious on this one only because I don't own a lot of. Really, this was the one record where I discovered this guitar player, and it was basically all I needed to hear from him. In the Dead of Night by Alan Holdsworth from UK.
Oh yeah.
That solo basically contains everything that's great about Alan Holdsworth, kind of in one little lump sum. But again, it's the way he floats. The notes kind of float into each other because he kind of bends them into each other with the bar. An amazing solo and an amazing use of whammy bar. I didn't own a lot of Alan Holdsworth records, but I remember when I bought that record and heard that guitar solo, I sat down quickly to try and learn some of it. And I didn't realize he was using the bar back then. I just figured he bended weird. But now I go back and yeah, that's obviously he's using a bar in that really nice solo on that one. So In the Dead of Night, Alan Holdsworth, UK.
Awesome. Legendary.
Yep.
Eric.
So I'm going to go back the other way. And this is, again, kind of like Hack said about Roger Fisher. This is a guy that most people don't talk about in terms of being a great guitar player, but I think he is, and I think he serves the song in anything he does. And I'm going to go with Mike Campbell from Tom Petty, and I'm going to go with You Got Lucky. And that's another one that kind of is reminiscent of that 50s sound, but it serves the song. It's a great little, there's not much to it, but what else would you put there? So that's my, number 7, Mike Campbell.
Good choice. Really good player.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't always think of like Tom Petty's music as like overly guitar oriented stuff, even though it kind of is. It's really tasty playing on a lot of those.
Try playing the American Girl solo correctly. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's funny you said that because we do it, and yeah,
you can cheat it, but if you
cheat.
play it right, it is tough. That is a tough lick.
Yeah, I cheat it. Yeah.
I do too, but
All right, let's see. What do we got here? I had to include this one because I think this guy is synonymous with the use of Floyd Rose, and he knows how to use it, and he has for many, many years. For the Love of God by Steve Vai from Passion and Warfare. I mean, just one of the great guitar instrumentals of all time anyway. But man, he's another guy who just does these cool, slow, dreamy things. And then when he just starts blazing, he throws in all these kind of wacky things with the bar and sometimes he's using the bar and the wah-wah at the same time, kind of tying in the last episode. But man, just such a brilliant, brilliant way of making those notes sing and soar and float. And the guitar in the hands of this guy is just, he can make it do anything. But and he's, he manipulates the bar in all sorts of weird different directions, up and down and all around. And yeah, always good. And I like when he does when he wrangles it around in circles, and it's crazy, crazy stuff. For Love of God, Steve Vai from Passion and Warfare.
Yeah, well, along that note, I had a Steve Vai in here. I was gonna go with Attitude Song. I mean, you can go on with Steve Vai. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of examples, but that thing that Jim was talking about earlier, like where he just kind of, he'll just like slap the bar and it gives you that like a little warble sound.
Yep.
Yeah, that's I mean, the first time I saw anybody do it, I think was Steve Vai, and that's another cool effect. And yeah, the guy's a beast. I mean, Yeah, you can make that bar. I mean, you can make it talk.
Yeah.
That in a wah, Tokyo Rose, like wah 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 wah. Like it's the guy's a beast. But yeah, that was my number 6 was Attitude Song, Steve Vai.
Cool. All right, Jim.
Okay, my number 6 is Satch Boogie by Joe Satriani.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
The classic Surfing with the Alien record. He obviously is a master manipulator with the whammy bar too. There's a couple of any number of songs you could have picked from that record, but I just love Satch Boogie. I love the way he plays in it, and I love the way he uses the bar in that song. Super cool. So,
Yeah.
Satch Boogie, Joe Satriani.
Great choice. Great choice. Eric, what do you got?
My number 6 already mentioned, and I like what Jim said about Holdsworth because we're all, I'm thinking, relatively the same age. And you remember when you first heard these guys, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have, you're like, what are they doing? Like, I loved how you put that, Jim, where you're like, I figured he was just bending differently or whatever, and then you figure out years later, right, he's using a bar. But the record that, there were some records that really probably hit all of us. I remember hearing Boston for the first time, and that first Boston record killed me. Obviously Van Halen. So you already mentioned Van Halen, but I got to throw in from that first album, Ice Cream Man, in terms of you just using whammy bar. I mean, you could go like Mean Streets to Fair Warning. There's so, like we said about Vai, there's tons of examples we can use from Van Halen. But there's very few records that hit me and stayed with me the way that first Van Halen record did. I mean, I can still listen to it. I'd probably listen to it 1,000 times, and it's fresh. It sounds great. Eddie's sound, to me, he just sounded the best on that record. And there's so many examples of what he did and how many guys found that the whole 80s thing was based on that first Van Halen record, right? All those guys came out. Everyone bought the Strats with the whammy bars and the Floyd Roses. So you got to have Van Halen in your list. So that's my number 6.
And they all ruined Van Halen for me. Everybody came out and did, I'm going to do that now. So every guitar player sounded like Van Halen. It's like, it made me get sick of them really fast. And, I was like, I saw their first tour. I was like right on board at the beginning. It's like, enough with the Van Halen. I get it. It's cool, but everyone's doing it. But
did you really saw them on their first tour?
Yeah, I saw them open up for Sabbath.
That's awesome.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, Butch always tells me to fuck off when I tell. As you, Butch. Yeah, I saw that tour, and I got tons of friends here in Los Angeles that grew up, and I got a friend that he was probably 10 years old, and he was living in Torrance, and he goes, I went to this backyard party and we were too young to go to the party. So we sat on the concrete wall and watched the band. And he goes, years later, I found out that the band was Mammoth before Van Halen. I mean, I know so many people out here. They're like, oh yeah, I used to see him at parties and in Pasadena. And, they were around for years playing, amazing shows, 3-4 sets of covers.
Well, they were the model for that scene, right? You had the blonde lead singer.
Starting around 75 or so, right? Yeah.
It's funny, no one wanted to sign them, though. That's the funny part because of what was good. It was like disco and new wave, and it's like heavy rock. Like, this is out. No one cares. And then Ted Templeman said, oh, yes, they'll care. And
we'll make them care, right?
Yeah. So, crazy, though. Yeah, he did so much.
So for my next pick, I remember, God, was it 82, 83, something like that. I remember listening to local radio station 101.5 WPDH and hearing this pretty heavy rocking song on the radio where this guy did this like blistering unaccompanied guitar solo in the beginning. I mean, it started off with a guitar solo and then it got to this real crunchy, like almost heavy metal, head banging track. And then when the solo came up, this guy's doing all these crazy air raid sirens and all this wild stuff. And then I'm like, I'm waiting. Who is this? That's the new song from Gary Moore. The album is Corridors of Power. The song is End of the World. And I was like, oh my God, I love this dude. And that I think just made me become a fan of his for life. And some of the stuff he does in this song, it's the really fast runs. It's the whammy bar. He's making it do all sorts of cool sounds and things like that. And at the time, to me, it was probably one of the most mind-blowing things I had heard since like Eruption or some of those early Van Halen records. And it's just a shame that Gary kind of veered away from that type of sound, a couple of years later. But man, those first few albums, whether he played the Charvel for a while, he was playing the Strat too. But man, he could also wrangle that whammy bar like it's nobody's business. So End of the World, Quarters of Power from Gary Moore.
Cool. Yeah. So my number 5 was spoken for. I'm not going to name any names, Jim, but so I'm going to use my bonus or whatever, and I'm going to retread again with Steve Vai because I really dig this song. I always have. The video is kind of cool. He's dressed like they're all painted in gold. I don't know how they got away with, not got sick from that. But anyway, the song I'm talking about is Bad Horsey.
Oh, Bad Horsey is great. Yeah.
That's an awesome tune. It's just got a really good groove, and there's some really tasty whammy stuff going on in that. And yeah, it's one of my favorite Vai tunes. It's a really cool instrumental. And yeah, but yeah, I'm gonna have to throw that one in because
it's a good one.
Yeah. So there you go.
Spawned the Bad Horsey, the Wah Wah pedal by Morley, right? So
there you go.
Yeah. All right, Jim, back to you.
So Hack, right back at you. This is a guy I always had a lot of respect for, but never really bought the records. He was the generations before me's guitar player. But I went back and I said, I know that this is like, he's the best guy at bar ever. And it's Jeff Beck. And I went back and I just, I cheated. I said, look, what are the best Jeff Beck whammy bar moments? And where were you when I listened to it? Because I never really owned that record. I never bought any Jeff Beck records. Like I said, he was the former generation's guitar player. I was into the guys that were new to me, that were new at the time. But I listened to Where Were You? And I'm like, Jesus, that is an unbelievable. Like the guy he plays melodies with the bar. And I watched a live track of him, a clip of him doing it. And it was like a standard crappy Fender tremolo.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like a Floyd. It was just, those things don't even
or just a regular, yeah.
And he's playing these note passages with the bar and the volume knob. And I'm just like, wow. I just have to buy that record, It's just like, I went to listen to the studio version, but I saw him playing it live first from some show.
Ronnie Scott, probably.
Yeah. You got to watch the Ronnie Scott show, Jim.
It's killer.
It was just like I'd heard him play various stuff before, and I know like Jeff Beck's a legend and all that, but I just, for some reason, I just never went out, other than my brother's Blow by Blow and Wired records, which he had around the house I used to listen to, but I didn't go further. But damn. The way he uses a bar is just like unlike anybody I've ever heard. He stands alone,
definitely
above everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I'm not taking it off the list because it deserves to be said twice. Where Were You by Jeff Beck? It's actually on the recorded version. It sounds like he's playing a theremin. If you ever listen to people play theremin, where the notes, you're just kind of using that antenna. It sounds like a fucking theremin. It does not sound like a guitar after a while. So,
well, every note he plays, right? He's working the volume, so it's all a swell, right? So, I mean, to have that amount of control over your instrument, where you're bringing in a note with the volume and then using the whammy at the same time, and always be like micro bends and pitch perfect the whole time.
It's crazy.
It's just.
And he's literally using his right hand controlling while he's picking, and he's using the volume and leaning on the bar all at the same time.
It's
like he's like a juggler, he's like juggling 3-4 things. And then his left hand, that's a whole nother story. So yeah, that's pretty. I was just like, wow, I knew he was good, but damn.
Yeah.
It was mind blowing. So
yeah.
All right, Eric.
Well, my number 5, anyone who's going to release an album called The Twang Bar King has to be on this list. So I'm going with Adrian Blue, and that track right there. Adrian, obviously, he gets crazy. I mean, I thought about Elephant Talk as well. But, you know, how do you not pick Twang Bar King? So that is my number 5. And he's Mr. Bag of Tricks as well. So Adrian's got pretty much every trick in the book, and he uses the whammy. If you listen to Elephant Talk, I won't even talk about the solo, but when Fripp's soloing, he's chording with the whammy bar, and it just sounds beautiful behind him. So, and his solo stuff for me, sometimes, you know, his voice can get to me, and sometimes he can be punky at times, but he's terrific with that whammy bar. So I had to go with him at number 5.
Yeah, it's a great choice. I forgot all about him. He definitely should be on here somewhere. So that's a good one.
I'm surprised you forgot about him, Pete.
Yeah, he's one, like, for whatever reason, I just overlooked him. But yeah, that's a great choice. Yeah, because Elephant Talk is just brilliant. I mean, who's making noises like that, right? Yeah, it's quite good.
Yeah.
All right, my next choice, sometimes it's not all about subtlety and taste and whatnot. Sometimes some of these guys use the whammy bar for pure ferocity and just to kind of strangle a few notes and just make a point. And I had to have my man Richie Blackmore in here somewhere. And I had a few things that I was going to go with, but I ultimately decided to go with Child in Time, the live version from Made in Japan, where right in the middle of that solo, he just starts, just wrangling that thing, and it's like it's making all these ungodly noises before he goes back into the solo, and he hits it again. And it's just really interesting because I went back and listened to the solo from In Rock, the studio version. He uses it on that too, but not quite in the same way. I go back and forth which solo I like better because they're both amazing and they're both completely different. But I usually lean towards the Made in Japan one, specifically because he's using that whammy bar in just such a cool and ferocious way. So I had to put him on here somewhere. I almost went with Speed King. Speed King is really good too. But yeah, Deep Purple, Richie Blackmore, Child in Time from Made in Japan.
Good pick.
Back to Hack.
Yeah, so this one here, I know there's probably not a lot of Motley Crue fans in the group here.
You don't think they're my number 1?
I won't name any names, but and this is a straight ripoff from Montrose, by the way. But the intro to Kickstart My Heart, that whole thing of the revving motors, the intro to Kickstart My Heart. I mean, everybody knows where Mick Mars got the idea for that, but it's still kind of cool, that whole effect. And I profess I do like Motley Crue to an extent, so I had to put them on the list. So yeah, for my number 4, Motley Crue, Kickstart My Heart.
All right, Mick Mars. All right,
it's funny. You know what I love about that intro to that song? It lets me know that I need to change the station on the as soon as I hear it, burnt off.
Wait, was that Montrose? Wait, switch that back.
Yeah, if it's Montrose, I'm leaving it on. If it's Motley Crue, when it came out, it was cool, I guess, for what it is. But 8 million spins later, I'm just like, please stop playing this freaking song. Like every time you turn on classic rock radio, was like, I think sometimes I get in before the second,
the second motorcycle. Yeah.
Oh, all the Motley Crue fans are groaning at like, Jim, you just lost all your cool factor with us.
That's all right.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, no, you can't like everything, right?
I like everything.
Hey, you know what? They've been used to me dissing on Motley Crue for years here, so don't worry about it.
It's all good, man. Pete, I'm usually 99% in line with you anyway. So, okay. So anyway, my number 4 is super obvious, but again, when we're talking about, for me, it's about when's the first time you heard that actually happen? Somebody do that with a guitar or whatever. So the first time I heard someone do a full octave, hit a note and go all the way down 1 octave, 1 complete octave with a whammy bar, and this is like, remember, I'm hearing this in real time, the first time, 1978, Eruption, Van Halen, right? When he hits that octave and he goes a full, I've never heard anybody go down a full octave where it's controlled and he's just not making noise. Not to mention all the other cool stuff he does in that song. That's groundbreaking. But for a whammy bar, I was like, wow, he just bent that whole thing in an entire octave down. So if you don't have a whammy bar, you used to have to like take it and take your tuning peg and go, you know.
Yeah.
But again, perfectly done and, seminal, just groundbreaking first time stuff. So Eruption, Van Halen, the first time for a lot of things, and that blew a lot of people's heads off. So it has to be mentioned. So there you go, Eruption, Van Halen.
Cool. Yeah, it's got to be here. It was on my list as well.
Yeah, got to be
Eric.
My number 4, this one is, I'll go back to the subtle, but I've always loved this solo. And it's not so much that I'm not a big Rush fan, but I know there's people that know Rush much better than I do. But I love the solo in Limelight. I always have. And I just think that
it's on my list too.
There you go. I just
Me
love
too.
that little and it's not, it's nothing aggressive. It's perfect. It's just a beautiful solo. The way, same thing, like just comes back in, does the drop with that section and the little harmonic, and just, it's so tasteful. And it's one of my favorite solos. And again, it's another one I've heard thousands of times probably, but I never get sick of it.
No. I mean, guys, back me up here. I think as time goes on, it becomes clearer and clearer to me that Alex Lifeson was the king of the perfectly orchestrated and composed guitar solos.
Mm-hmm.
They're so memorable, almost all of them, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean,
You'll get no argument from me on that.
Yeah, I mean, they always talk about Neil and Geddy, and Alex is kind of the third, third wheel. I mean, you don't hear Alex mentioned in that same pantheon, I guess, as you hear Geddy and Neil. And I just think, who could have done it better? I mean, he was perfect for that band, and I think he deserves more attention than he gets.
Agreed. Yeah.
Well,
totally.
the thing with Alex is, so Neil and Geddy were the shred, and Alex was all the color to fill in. Those guys were just going, and Alex would just hit a chord. He was a genius at chord voicings and using chorus and delay and whammy bar once he got into that. And it's on my list too, but not yet. So
and finding his spots.
Yeah,
always found his spots and just he was a man.
He's my hero.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Me too.
all right. How about a guy with a vibrato bar on a Gibson SG? We haven't really brought that up yet. Jim is smiling.
On my list too.
Jim knows exactly where I'm going with this one. Electric Reflections of War by Mr. Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush, specifically from the live album, which is just, again, this is one of those examples of pure cacophony and noise, but bringing it to like extreme levels where it becomes like this massively orchestrated wall of sound. And I love how Frank Marino can go from like blistering blues rock to jazz to pure metallic, just absolute fury within the drop of a hat. And he especially back in the 70s, man, he would use that whammy bar or the vibrato bar in his SG all the time. And that he had that little Hendrix-ism about him, which I think that's where he got that from. But got to have Frank Marino on here somewhere. So Electric Reflections of War from Frank Marino Mahogany Rush live from 1970, was it 78? I think that came out, something like that. Yeah.
What's amazing about him, if you watch any of his live stuff, is how fluid he was and just going from one style to another. Like blues to jazz to bebop and then back. It's just like, I mean, the processing and then the translation. It's just holy shit, man. That guy, another one of those guys that didn't get his due, I think. I mean,
No.
Underrated is the understatement of the year for.
yeah, he was insanely good. Yeah.
And the king of shred before there was shred.
He was faster than pretty much everybody.
Yeah, big time. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Hack. What do you got? Where are we? Number 3? Is that where we're
it's number 3. So on a completely different tangent, this is a band that I think we all love. I'm pretty sure. Judas Priest, right? This is it. All right, cool. So you can't do a Whammy show and not talk about KK Downing going nuts on Sinner, right? That the whole thing is, just him going forever on the whammy bar and playing different phrases and whatever. Like, this may not be a popular opinion. I mean, as far as the original lineup, I was always a Tipton guy. I always liked his playing better. I always thought he was the better player, but there were moments where KK does shine, and this is one of them. And he totally just goes ape shit on his whammy bar in the solo and squeezes every friggin' ounce of goodness out of it. And whether if you've seen him do it live, he's up there with his flying V and he's leaning back and he's whamming away, and he's totally in the moment. So you got to put KK and Sinner in this list. So there you go.
Good choice, Jim.
Okay, well, either one or two things is happening here. Either our great minds think alike or we're all reading from the same list. So I had number 3, Electric Reflections of War as well, from Mahogany Rush Live. It is a brilliant use of chaos with a whammy bar. And he basically took what Jimmy did in Star Spangled Banner and, added some steroids to it. And I love the way it beautifully rolls into World Anthem, which I'm pretty sure he's barring on that whole melody too.
Yeah.
Or parts of it. But yeah, Frank is a god and then now not spoken about enough. And yeah, Bigsby on an SG. What's better than that, right? So yeah, that was my number 3, Electric Reflections of War, Mahogany Rush Live, 1978.
Cool. Eric.
All right, I'm going to give people homework because probably people don't know this guy very well, but he has risen to be one of my favorite players. And Pete, we talked to Danny probably a month ago. We did an interview with him. I'm going to pick a song from Marvin. Danny Raven is a guitar player, fantastic player. It's from their album Last Chapter of Dreaming, and it's the opening track, Blue Fingers. And you could probably pick any one of their albums and find 3, 4, 5 tunes where he uses the whammy bar. But he's got a ton of videos on YouTube where he kind of demonstrates different techniques of different players, but Danny's a fabulous player. So check that band out if you don't know them. Great use of the whammy bar, great player all the way around in the rock fusion vein for these guys, but just some terrific stuff from them. And that's one of many I could have picked, but I really like that one in terms of the whammy bar.
Yeah, that's a great pick. He is a phenomenal under the radar player who's totally into theory, and he's a total student of the guitar in just about every way. So that's a great choice there.
What was that band?
Marvin. Marbin, or Marvin, right?
What a funny name for a band. Okay. Marvin. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah. Good, really good stuff. It's all instrumental, kind of like rock, jazz, prog fusion type of thing. Yeah, it's really, really good stuff. All right, I'm gonna go with Priest, just like Hack did, but I'm gonna pick a different song. And this is a song that features 2 great guitar solos, one from each of them. But KK is amazing, and again, it's just pure KK chaos, and it's Victim of Changes. I think 2 of his best examples of using the whammy bar in a solo is Sinner and Victim of Changes. They're both classic 70s tunes, and this one's from, of course, the great Sad Wings of Destiny. And I don't have much more to say about it other than how Hack was talking about it before. It's just pure KK. He was always a disciple of Jimi Hendrix. Loved Jimi Hendrix's more chaotic type of playing, and that's what he brought to Judas Priest, where you had Tipton was a little more fluid, a little more shreddy. So, but yeah, Victim of Changes, Judas Priest, KK Downing.
Cool. So my number two, and I mean, he's been mentioned already, is a Van Halen song. And this wouldn't actually be much of a song if it wasn't for the whammy, because there's not really a lot of song there. But the whammy and little things that he's doing throughout kind of make it into a song. And this is off of Women and Children First. And I'm talking about Everybody Wants Some. You know, I mean, it's like there's if you hear the song, there's not a lot going on. It's just, you know, a couple of chord stabs here and there, but he's doing all these whammy things through the lyric, which kind of like, oh, right, okay, that's cool, and kind of propels the song along. So this is kind of a study in how to make a song out of just, you know, minimal playing and lots of whammy. So yeah, I mean, this can when you know when we were talking about doing the show, Pete, this came on my thing, and I'm like, holy shit, this whole song is kind of built around a whammy bar. So it's a perfect fit. So yeah, so off of Women and Children First, Everybody Wants Some Van Halen.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So many choices for Van Halen.
Yeah, there is.
I mean,
There
so
is.
many. Okay, so I Will See You, Sinner, which was my second, my number two from Unleashed in the East, because that is about as good as a chaos as it gets.
Yeah.
And then the one you mentioned, Victim of Changes, I had Sinner, but I'm gonna just add Dissident Aggressor to that list.
There you go.
My favorite Judas Priest, one of my favorite Judas Priest songs, and boy, does he make some noise in that one.
Yeah,
So,
he does.
very short, but so just KK Downing overall with a whammy bar is my number two. It could be anything he does with it, but I had Sinner, but I'll add Dissident Aggressor to that list.
Distant Aggressor is such a great unsung Judas Priest song.
Oh my God.
So
They won a
good.
Grammy for that. Did you know that?
Did they really?
Like 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Really?
I don't know if it was from a reissue. Yeah, apparently they won a Grammy for that song.
They beat out Jethro Tull.
Maybe, but I was surprised as when I was read. I was like, why? Wait, they want to put.
Yeah, I got to look that up. Was it on a live album or something? I don't. They
It
haven't
was,
released a live
I think,
album.
from when they reissued the album for the anniversary. It
Okay.
was some weird Grammy. I'm pretty 99% sure I read it. And I'm like, and there's an interview with KK talking about how he won a Grammy for that song. And I guess he wrote.
I mean, hey, I'm happy for him, but I got to
Me
look that
too,
up.
but I was completely shocked. But
Yeah.
look it up. I believe it to be true.
Cool.
But it is one of my favorite Priest songs.
That's so good. So good. Great choice. Eric.
My number two is again from a guitar player that I've really come to love his stuff over the last year or two. It's Scott Henderson.
Oh,
And he started doing, after Tribal Tech, he started doing a lot of bluesier stuff on his solo records. But this is actually a collaboration called HBC. It's Henderson, Berlin, and Chambers. And they do a cover of Billy Cobham's Stratus. And his whammy bar in that, he's just phenomenal. And a lot of his bluesy stuff that he did on his solo albums, he used a lot of whammy bar. He kind of, not that he wasn't using it before, but he really kind of brought that into his playing in some of those. But that version of Stratus I really love. And that's a little tip of the cap to George, because he turned me on to that one. But
Yep.
just Scott Henderson, somebody you can find multiple examples of his playing, very tasteful, but the whammy bar in Stratus is just, he's really just, like you guys said, it's just, everything's clean. The notes are perfect. It's just check it out. Great tune.
Yeah, that is a great cover. He's become one of the kings of the Strat in over the last couple decades. And you know, that's funny, you talk about Stratus, but geez, I didn't even think Tommy Bolin.
Yeah.
Tommy Bolin's got some really great whammy bar moments as well. Didn't even think of that. All right, my number two, I'm going to go with a guy we talked about back at the top of the hour, I guess, here. Dimebag Darrell, a lot of instances throughout a lot of Pantera songs. I decided to go with the solo in Floods from the Great Southern Trendkill, which is, that's like a kind of moody, doomy, kind of slower track, and he's got this solo that just kind of builds and builds. It's atmospheric. I love when Dimebag like infuses like heavy distortion and a crybaby wah and the whammy bar, and he gets these like just wild noises. And this is a great solo because it's not as fast and shreddy as some of this other stuff. It kind of like just kind of goes and goes and goes for multiple bars, and it roughly, I think it's about a minute long. So again, could have picked any of them. He's got so many good ones, but Floods from the Great Southern Trendkill is my choice here from Pantera. Back to Hack.
Cool. So my number one was already was spoken for, but I'm gonna say it again. Limelight. Alex Lifeson. I mean, that his whammy effect on that is all super musical. It's haunting. He's basically playing like he's giving you the whole sort of like an isolation, like a what's the word I'm looking for, kind of an ice. I'm losing words here right now, but like when he hits the open B and then he just gives like wow, like I mean you could sing this so I can hear it in my head. It's so emotive, right? And it just it speaks so well to the song, and the whole thing about being alone, being on stage, that whole isolation thing, the whole Neil, pretending you're what's that line? Your friend is a
Can't pretend a stranger is a
long-awaited friend. Yeah, that whole loneliness thing, and it just, I mean, his no choice in the way he controls it. He basically does a musical interpretation of that absolutely perfectly. And it's a very, very subtle use of a whammy bar on that. And that's my number one. I mean, for me anyway. And I'm
the way he's wrangling that last note and it kind of like fades out when the chords come back.
Yeah, he puts the delay on it.
Yeah, I mean, he's masterful, right? And I'm a huge Alex Lifeson fan. So yeah, I've already used up my other one, so that's all I got. It's like these guys are just, anyways, it's all right. But yeah, that's all I got. Alex Lifeson, Limelight. Can't say enough about Alex Lifeson. Can't say enough about that song. Classic. Perfect.
Jim.
Ditto. That was my number one. Also, Alex Lifeson is always, or Something Rush is always going to be my number one at the top of these lists. That's probably the most recognizable one of his whammy bar solos.
Yeah,
one of his best. I could throw out a couple other examples, but that one is the one that best
that stands out.
That's the one for me. That's my number one. I guess I could throw Farewell to Kings in there, which is super early.
Yeah.
And he's probably doing that on his 355 with the Bigsby. And then, as a substitute, and then possibly maybe the Weapon, the solo on the Weapon. I mean, once he got into whammy bar, he became very good at it. So Limelight was my number one, but there's any number of songs on that record that could be used. Red Barchetta, I know he uses some bar.
Yeah, Red Barchetta. The cool thing about
subdivisions, man, big time.
Subdivision, yeah. Once he signals, he really used it a lot.
Yeah.
And so Alex, like you said, Pete, one of my favorite guitar player and one of the most expressive soloists.
And even the setup for Limelight, like the way the music kind of builds it and it just stops and then he hits that first note. It's like it's just in the pocket. It's like, okay, here it comes.
Then hits the harmonic, then hits the bar and bends it up into the next. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy good.
Ridiculous.
It's a thing of beauty.
It is. It's a thing of beauty, eh?
Eric, what do you got?
Well, I guess our number ones we're all in repeat mode, but I had to put this guy at number one. I figured he'd get mentioned ahead of time, but I'm not even going to pick a song. Go out and watch that Ronnie Scott show. Watch Jeff Beck. There's nobody better with the whammy bar than Jeff Beck. Perfection. And I wasn't even thinking like you guys were talking about. He's always playing with the volume knob or the tone knob. I mean, don't forget that too. He's got the tone knob going sometimes. And even watch his technique. His technique with the whammy bar is very different because he'll play with his fingers, or he's picking with his fingers, but he's very subtle. He'll almost use like his pointer finger sometimes on the whammy bar, just
On the bar, yeah.
tiny.
Yeah, his pointer finger and his thumb too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
But I can't think of a better example of just pure and beautiful. I mean, he'll make you cry. I mean,
Yeah.
just in that show, just perfection. I mean, Caliuta, I think, is on drums for that show, and it's that Tal Wickenfeld is playing bass.
Yeah.
I forget who's playing keyboards, so sorry about that. But yeah, if you have any interest at all, you got to check out that show. It's all over YouTube.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better with a whammy bar than Jeff Beck.
And Jeff's got his whammy bar like locked, so it's like parallel with the strings. It's not just hanging down there and doing this, which I think is really cool. It's always right there.
Yep.
So it's almost like he's using it as another string. It's a very unique way of using it.
And it's his phrasing without it is fantastic. And that just adds to his phrasing. It's perfection for me. I mean, nobody does
It's
it better.
ridiculous. No doubt.
Yeah.
And I wonder when he like really first started, because if you listen to his music, you know, his playing in the 60s and throughout a good chunk of the 70s, he really doesn't use it all that much.
No.
But I think he started, like, if you ever hear the Flash album, that album he did like with him and Rod Stewart first got back together. Rod sings on one or two songs on that album, but there's a song on that album, and this was like 1980. 85 or something like that.
Yep.
There's a song on there called "It Gets Us All in the End," and he's got Jimmy Hall from Wet Willie singing on it, and it's a pretty rocking tune. And he goes berserk on the whammy bar on that song. And I think for me, that's the first time I really remember him using it a lot in that fashion. And then everything thereafter, it became like a staple for him. So.
What about a freeway jam? He used it.
Freeway jam, he uses it as well. Yeah, that's one of the early instances. Yeah. That was one of my honorable mentions, actually. Freeway jam. Great.
People Get Ready with Rod Stewart. He's using it.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's the Flash album where he really was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. I can do this," you know, and do it often. So, yeah. All right. So I'm amazed that nobody mentioned Randy Rhoads. So I'm going to do it right now.
I kind of did.
I thought about it.
I went with Brad.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go with Suicide Solution by Ozzy and Randy Rhoads, but specifically from the tribute album, the live album, which was released after Randy died. I think Randy was amazing. Again, I think he borrowed a lot from Eddie. Obviously, a lot of people did, but you know, he injected these cool little classical runs and things. And man, Suicide Solution was always a great reason for Randy to use the bar. But I think on this live version, Randy's just on fire. And then he does the unaccompanied guitar solo, like in the middle of the song, and he does all sorts of wild things with it. And I always really dig listening to that. That's one of my favorite, like, Randy Rhoads moments of anything that was ever officially released. So Suicide Solution from the tribute album, Ozzy and Randy.
Great pick.
Good one.
Anybody got any honorable mentions that have not been mentioned already?
Sure.
I think Hack has mentioned all of his, right?
Well, I was just thinking, you know, I should have mentioned something Nuno, but I can't think of a particular song. But you got to have Nuno in here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah.
I think I've got two. And again, I know we've talked about a lot of live stuff. So you may not hear it as much on the studio stuff, but if you listen to Gilmore live, like Comfortably Numb and things like that, he uses the whammy bar a lot more in the studio. And his solo side, this is cheating, but his Out of the Blue, where he uses the whammy pedal and gets that really big swell effect. That's kind of cool. I mean, I know it's not a whammy bar, but I think when you see him live, he definitely uses the bar more than it seems like on the studio versions. And the only other one I had was Guthrie Govan from the Aristocrats.
Yeah.
And it's Pig's Day Off or Smuggler's Quarter are two really cool songs with whammy.
That's a great one. Yep. Very cool. Jimmy, got any?
Well, just not a particular, well, maybe a particular song, but I'm trying to think of the song. And I don't know if he's doing this with a whammy bar or something else. I think it is, but the Steve Stevens solo where he makes it sound like a machine gun.
Billy Idol tune.
Yeah, Billy Idol song. What is it?
Rebel Yell?
Rebel Yell.
Rebel Yell. What is he using a bar to do that? You know, that thing he does?
Yeah.
I think in the video he did, but I don't know if that was for effect in the video. I don't know what he used in the studio, but
'Cause if he used a bar for that, that's pretty freaking cool.
It's either a bar, or it's
Really
like a
cool
sped up Echoplex or something, right?
Right.
So,
Maybe, I don't know. That's why I wasn't sure. I wasn't like a big Billy Idol fan, but I was like, that's really freaking cool. Whatever he just did with that is really cool. I don't know what it was.
and
That
Jim,
was
I
a-
gotta tell you with Steve Stevens, and I've been talking to Pete about it a lot. I've been listening to a lot of Derek Sherinian, and he's killing me. I mean, I guess I never thought of him. I mean, I knew he was a good guitar player, but I'm listening to the stuff he does with Sherinian, and he is fantastic.
He's serious. Yeah, it's kind of like he's Billy Idol's guitar player. So you're like, well, I don't really like Billy Idol, so who cares? But I knew a lot of people that really like Steve Stevens,
Oh,
and I
he's-
just didn't listen to him because I wasn't a big Billy Idol fan.
Right.
But I thought he was really good.
his solo stuff is great. Have you guys heard the Bozio 11th Stevens album?
I
Man,
yeah, I got to go back to it.
yeah. And even that first, I'm not a fan by any means, but that first Vince Neil solo album, and Steve plays on that. Steve kills on that. That for me, that makes the album. He's really good on that.
Yeah, he is a great guitar player.
Really talented player. Yeah. All right, I have a couple that have not been mentioned yet that I've been holding here. So here's one that's all about the noise, and I think next to Hendrix, it's probably one of the oldest examples of crazy whammy bar mayhem, and it's called "Freeform Guitar" by Terry Kath on the Chicago Transit Authority album, right? And even that, it's like there are times I'm just kind of like, yeah, I really can't listen to this because it's just freaking cacophony. But it's just basically a Stratocaster going straight through a Fender amp with gain on high, and him just doing all sorts of feedback and whammy bar craziness. So I guess that's one of the early examples.
It used to scare me when I used to listen to Chicago when I was a real little kid, and that came on. I used to pick it up and go to the next one. It scared the hell out of me.
It almost hurts, right? You listen to it, you're like, oh man.
Well, it's just creepy and evil sounding. It's like,
It
damn, like, that's really scary sounding.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy
He's a
stuff.
monster too. Yeah, that's a cool one. I was going to mention that, but thank you for mentioning it. Yeah.
Steve Lukather. How about Rosanna from Toto 4? A lot of whammy bar in that song. Really tasty solo too. Rock and blues and jazz all thrown in together. Lukather uses the bar quite a bit. That's another choice. I've got talking about a couple like guys who followed in Eddie's wake. How about Dokken, Kiss of Death from the Back for the Attack album, Mr. George Lynch. He used the bar quite a bit, and the hammer-ons and taps and all that sort of thing. Akira Takasaki from Loudness. Song We Could Be Together from Thunder in the East. And last but not least, anybody remember Riot? How about Flashbacks from the Fire Down Under album, which is just basically Mark Real and Rick Ventura doing all sorts of crazy whammy bar stuff for like 4 minutes. Not even really a song. It's kind of like freeform guitar, but more like metal style, right? So that's really, really cool too. So that's all I got. I think that's everything. Yeah, that's everything. I had Freeway Jam also, and I had a lot of other ones that were mentioned. So,
Hot for Teacher was another good one.
yeah.
Teacher. Yeah.
We could do a whole show on just like Van Halen whammy bar moments. There's
Right.
so
So
many.
many good ones.
Yeah. So for everybody watching, list some of your favorite whammy bar moments down in the comments below. There might even be some bass players who did whammy bar stuff on occasion. Didn't Billy Sheehan used to use one every now and then?
Yeah, I
In
think
the
he did.
Talus days.
Yeah.
There might be some of those as well. But put yours down in the comments below, and visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. All together. All the damn time.
Time.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Tune in tomorrow for the Monsters Den, Friday morning with Martin Popoff in the Funhouse. And then we've got the UK Connection on Saturday. And, of course, we started all over again on Monday with the Hudson Valley Squares. For Eric Porter, Jim Bacchi, and Guitar Hack, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching us here on the Guitarist Corner. Have a good one, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers.